Jeneen, welcome to Perspectives.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I want to start with your story. I prepped the audience and gave them some information about your story, your background. Let's start at the beginning. What was your home life like? What was it like growing up in Southern California with an abusive mother and father?
It was hard for me growing up as a child. I was abused by my mom and my dad. My mom was home a lot more than my father was, and my mom would yell and scream at me, and in order for me to be heard, I had to be a couple of octave levels higher. And it was just dysfunctional. It was teaching me to be dysfunctional as well, because I was yelling and screaming to get my point across, and nothing was ever good enough for my mom.
Was there any signs of abuse or addictions or anything like that growing up? Did you notice any of that?
My father used to drink when he was on the job to cope with his strenuous work, and when he came home, he was frustrated with the family, and he ended up taking it out on the family with hitting my mom, hitting my brother, and I don't remember him ever hitting me, but I remember him hitting my mom my brother.
Do you think you blocked those memories out, or you're just not sure?
I think I blocked it out.
Okay.
But I remember, even if I blocked it out, didn't block it out, just the thought of him trying to hit me, I was threatened. So I was on the couch, and my brother was on the couch. And I remember him with a violin stick in his hands and being afraid of my father.
Oh my goodness. And how old were you at this time when this happened?
Little.
Right.
I would say 7, 8.
Not knowing what's going on or why. Just anger.
Just anger.
Right.
He was very angry, and he had a temper.
Interesting. Now, do you think your father's abusive personality to mom and your brother, and potentially you, do you think that's what caused your mother's anger and frustration at you? She could take it out on you where she couldn't take it out on him or retaliate back?
Absolutely. I really feel that she really didn't have an outlet, and I was her metaphoric punching bag.
Punching bag, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She also had a bad childhood, and I feel that was a pattern, so that was another contribution to abuse, I feel, that contributed to her anger.
Right. So home life, growing up, not very positive, not a lot of positive to draw from. Okay. Let me switch subjects. I understand that you became a Christian when you were still a teenager. I want you to tell us a little bit about that. How did you come to know the Lord, or how did that process take place?
Sure. I was raised Catholic, and
same here, by the way.
And when we moved to Newbury Park from Hollywood, we attended First Christian Church of Newbury Park, and that is where I accepted Jesus Christ into my heart. And it was more of my personal decision versus being raised in a Catholic church. Now I'm making a decision of accepting Jesus Christ into my heart.
Okay, did mom and dad go to church with you as well, or did they just drop you off and leave you be?
My mother started taking us to the First Christian Church of Newbury Park. Yes.
Okay, and then just dropped you off. They didn't go with you though?
Oh no, my mom attended.
Oh, your mom attended.
My mom attended, yes.
All right. And then what were some of the activities or things that you did at church or with that church?
I was highly involved with youth group and volunteering. We had Bible scholarships that I participated in. And
awesome. Yeah. Any church camps, anything like that?
Yes, there was a church camp. So, and instead of asking my parents for money for camp, I decided to earn a scholarship, a Bible scholarship, to go to camp. Yes.
So what did you have to do to earn that scholarship?
Vacuum the church.
Oh, they put you to work.
memorize Bible verses.
Stuff like that. So would you consider yourself, an evangelical Christian at that point in time? Were you, talking heavily to other people about your relationship with God and stuff like that?
Yes, it was at a point in my life where I shared my faith. I wanted to let other people know how God's working in my life, and I wanted to help other people. And I also, this is very important too, I felt that this was my family. This was a place where I felt loved and
Church
secure.
versus home.
Yes.
Okay.
This was my safe haven.
So it's kind of a sanctuary for you.
It was. It was a place where I felt respected and loved versus my home life.
Very good. Now, how old were you when you came to know the Lord?
I was about 14 years old.
Okay. All right. Now, I understand you had a very traumatic childhood growing up at home in California where you guys lived. Then you moved to New York to go live with your aunt and uncle. How did that come about? How did that process of going and living with them transpire amongst your family? And what were the reasons you gave to want to take this journey?
There was so much friction in my house and fighting, and my mom just thinking I'm wild, that I'm just an out of control teenager, just didn't respect me at all. And I wanted to live with my aunt and uncle too.
So it was your request?
It was my request, and then my aunt wanted to bring me in. Yes.
Interesting. Okay. And then I understand also that you and your family went to some family counseling to try to resolve the hostilities amongst the family?
Yes, that was when I was younger. So that point in my life, I was 14 years old. But when I went to counseling, it was because my mom said that I was the problem in the family and that we all needed to go to counseling. And that is where they found out that I wasn't the problem in my family. So.
Okay. And do you want to share with us what they said or who they said was the problem?
The counselor dug into the domestic violence that was going on in the family and confronted my father about hitting children, hitting us, hitting my mom. And he said, "Where do you draw the line?" And it was there that he stopped hitting us. So somehow the counselor convinced my dad that hitting is not the right thing to do. Right.
What about the drinking or the alcohol?
The drinking stopped.
Did it really?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was Dad more tolerable when this happened, or easier to get along with, or was he, because he didn't have the crutch of the substance abuse, was it harder for you to relate to him?
He was working a lot. Sober versus an alcoholic, I would say that the mental abuse doesn't matter.
It continued?
It continued.
Okay.
Yeah.
And his reaction or response was mostly to check out and not deal with it and let your mom deal with it. And then her response was more abuse.
Exactly.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I was summarizing that correctly. Okay. So now you're requesting to move in with your aunt and uncle in New York. And
my aunt is
all for it?
All for it.
Okay. So your mom and dad approved the trip and they ship you out to New York.
Exactly.
And you were how old at this time?
14 years old.
14. And this is in, what, July of that year?
This is in July.
July.
Exactly.
Okay, so they ship you out to New York in July of that year. What was your new home like? What did you think about your new environment in comparison to where you came from?
No yelling or screaming. It was quieter.
Right.
And
So Club Med.
Club Med,
Right. So to speak.
so to speak.
Right.
My grades improved. If I did the dishes or I cleaned the house, I felt appreciated and loved, and my aunt and uncle really thought I was a good kid. And that was something that I was craving. I was craving feeling like a good kid because I felt like I wasn't with living at home. with my
Attention.
family.
Right.
Not
And-
so much attention, but praise.
Praise.
Yes.
Okay. Praise. Yeah.
Praise. Yes.
Mom and Dad took you to church? Did they just drop you off, or did they actually attend with you?
No, they attended with me.
Okay.
Yes.
So did their attendance of church make any difference or impact in your home life?
No,
Did it improve?
It did not improve. The verbal abuse, the yelling and screaming, I couldn't focus. I couldn't concentrate in school. It was not a good environment to be in. Nothing I did was right. I was always a failure in my mom's eyes. Yes.
And that's got to be traumatic for a young child to be always wrong, to never be able to do anything that is approved of. And even when you think you are, it's still wrong. Even when you think you are, it's still wrong. So growing up, did you have any family comparisons where you saw what a good, normal home life was like, that you could compare and realize yours was so dysfunctional?
I did. My friend in second grade. So at a very young age, I knew that there were other families that were functional and completely different, and I wanted that. And it made me so angry that, my home life was not like that. And my girlfriend was raised by a single mom, and she had everything I wanted, which was love, to feel loved and accepted by my family.
And that, I'm sure, was infuriating to you.
It was. I started responding with rage, and it was a normal reaction to a dysfunctional family.
So they'd get mad at you. You'd stand up and get mad because you knew that wasn't the way your family life should be.
Exactly.
So everything fueled and fed everything else, the anger and the rage, and then it didn't stop. Yeah. So now you want to move to New York to go live with your aunt and uncle. How did that come about?
My parents would always talk to my aunt and my uncle and touch base with them. And of course, they would ask, how's the family? And then my mom would respond of how crazy the family situation is and how out of control I am. And
So you were the problem.
So I was the problem. And it was either my aunt suggested it or I suggested moving in with my aunt and uncle.
So how old were you when this actually took place? When you moved from California to live with mom and dad to go live with your aunt and uncle in New York?
I was 14 years old.
14 years old. And it was what time of the year?
July.
July.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. And so you move to New York, you get a new family, so to speak, a new home life. What was that like for you?
It was like night and day. It was everything that I wanted. I felt that if I tried hard, if I washed the dishes, if I made the bed, if I cleaned up the house, they thought I was a good kid and give me positive reinforcements all the time. So every time I did something for them, they would shower me with love.
So it was a positive reinforcing you for the things that you had done for them.
Right. My grades improved. There was a difference in my grades.
Okay.
I excelled in school. I was on honor roll mention.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So you're not harboring any of this anger and resentment and rage anymore.
No, it's a completely different life.
Right. So now you think you have this beautiful childhood or home life that you envied your friend for earlier.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I understand it didn't last long. The bubble got burst.
So my uncle would drink. He was an alcoholic, but he was that when I arrived. So this was still a good situation for me. There was no yelling, there was no screaming. So although, I helped my aunt put him to bed because he would stumble into the house, literally stumble into the house.
So you were caring for him.
So we were carrying him to the bedroom, and that was part of my routine. It was part of the regimen. And it was just almost acceptable. I didn't think anything out of the I just didn't think it was such a bad thing because it was so much better than my home life.
So you were okay with it?
I was okay.
Even with a little drama or trauma here?
What? He got drunk. I knew it wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but it was a lot better than coming home to a yelling, screaming mom that just didn't love me. So what? He got drunk. I knew it wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but it was a lot better than coming home to a yelling, screaming mom that just didn't love me.
Interesting. So what was your relationship like with your aunt at this time?
Wonderful.
Was it?
Yes. I felt, loved by her. We would go grocery shopping together. She offered to get me a tutor for studying, and that's how I would excel in algebra.
Did you feel like a daughter
Yes.
for the first time in your life? I mean, I'm trying to put myself into your shoes and say, well, how would I feel if it was me? Did you feel like you were accepted?
I felt accepted. I felt appreciated. It was completely different.
Hard to imagine your life before versus the new life now.
Right.
All right, so I understand you have a birthday in November. So this is about 4 months after you moved there. And now you're 15. And things started changing about January of the following year. Let's talk about that a little bit. And I know this is going to be difficult, so I apologize in advance, but let us know what was going on and how that abuse from your uncle started.
It started after I turned 15. The first sign of it was when I was in the kitchen and I was doing dishes and my aunt was on the couch and he was drunk. When was he not? He came into the kitchen and he felt me up. And
let me stop you there for a second. So when you say he felt you up, what does that mean? Just so that we have some clarification. Is that touching you in inappropriate areas or in
yes.
the breast or
he molested
everywhere else?
Me.
He molested you?
He molested me.
Okay.
Let's back up a little bit here before that happened, because I just want you to know my thought process at this point. I lost my train of thought because I got emotional about it.
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
Please get emotional about it. You want to share that with everyone else.
Right. My aunt and uncle were on the couch. My family was about to come and visit us from California.
Your mom and dad?
My mom and dad
Okay.
were planning on coming to visit us, and my uncle told me, your mom and dad are coming. And I said, okay, that's great. And my uncle said, I can see why your parents didn't want you anymore. And that hit me so hard. It was awful because I finally felt like I was loved by this family. And then he said that, and my aunt said, don't worry, he's just drunk. And I was very upset about it, but I just believed, okay, well, he's just drunk.
And this just came out of the blue?
It just came out of the blue, but I think I know why he said it. It was because of the fact that I would worry about his health, and I tried to get him to stop drinking. And I was, an extroverted kid at this point, and I just voiced my concern. I'm worried about your health and your liver, and I think you need to stop drinking. And I would kind of hound him a little bit in a joking way. And he just did not want to be told that it was a problem. And most alcoholics do not want to face that they even have a problem.
Right. So let me stop you there for a second. You reach out in love to your uncle to tell him of your concern for his drinking and what he's doing to himself.
Right.
And he responds with emotional abuse.
Exactly. Now he's lashing out on me verbally.
And this is the first time he's done that.
He's done it other times before, but that was
a hard one for you.
That was a hard one for me. I heard him verbally abuse my aunt and about weight issues, and he would constantly pick on her about her weight, and I would stick up for her during that time.
So did that kind of abuse, was that constant from the minute you got there, or did that shortly after you got there?
It was just here and there.
So
it wasn't constant
often
in my face like it was at home. And I think that's why I just thought the situation was so much better, because at home, it was all in my face all the time. And there it was maybe just snippets of abuse.
So I'm gonna inject myself into your story a little bit.
Sure.
And put myself in your position. So you're confronting your uncle and because you love him.
Right.
I'm assuming that's the reason you're confronting, and you care about him and his health.
Right.
And then he responds the way he responded, lashes out at you. Doesn't that just break your heart? You're grateful for the love and the care they've been giving you, and now all of a sudden he shatters that image or that persona you've built up.
Right.
Surrounding them.
And very good about not getting emotional, because Victory conditioned me that way. And we'll talk about that later.
Sure.
But
how did it make you feel with your uncle rejecting you?
It was almost comfortably numb, because and then mixed emotions where it hurt like hell. It hurt like hell, because now I finally felt loved. And then he shattered that.
And now you're unloved again, and now you're the problem,
right,
or the reason for the...
Now we're back to square one.
Right.
We're back to square one again.
That had to hurt.
It did.
And mom and dad, no doubt, is coming to visit.
They're coming to visit.
And you definitely probably don't want that visit.
Right. But they come to visit.
What was that like? Was that okay, or was that...
It was okay. My mom said she changed, and there was no, yelling or screaming on the visit. It was fine.
Okay. So your birthday's in November. When did mom and dad come and visit?
I want to say January, February, around that time frame.
Okay. So your uncle starts abusing you in the kitchen, and this is January, right?
Right.
Early January, late January?
I would say January, around January, because in February is when things really started getting worse.
All right, so your uncle's abuse starts in January. He starts by molesting or feeling
And that was
places that he has no
shortly
business to do that.
after my parents left.
Okay.
Now I'm in the kitchen. He molested me. I didn't say anything to anyone.
And when you say molested you, what does that mean? And I'm sorry this is difficult, but
That's okay.
I'm just looking for clarification. So that we can be on the same page.
So he felt my breast.
Okay.
And then I was shocked. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about that verbal lashing.
Okay.
Because now it's leading up to this. When he felt me up, I had mixed emotions. One, oh my God, I can't believe he just did that. I cannot believe he just did that.
Right.
And the second was, he's not mad at me anymore.
Oh my goodness. So now you've empowered him to continue.
I felt that he is not mad at me anymore. He
Wow.
must not be mad at me anymore because he did it in such a joking way. It was like funny to him, and then that was the mixed emotions.
So he
oh
was
my God,
probably-
he did it to me. He did that to me, and I'm in shock, and I can't believe how he did that. And the other was, well, I guess he's not mad anymore.
So it sounds like he was just testing the waters to see where he could go or where he could take it.
Right.
How you would respond.
And it was a sick way of thinking for me, but I guess at the time, because of feeling so unloved by my family and then him verbally lashing out at me, you could see why I would think that.
Any kind of attention would be a positive for you.
Right.
Even if it's the wrong kind of
you're
attention.
searching for this to be accepted.
All right, I understand because we've talked a little bit previously. I understand it went from bad, just feeling you up, to much, much, much worse. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
This is really hard for me to compose myself. It started when my uncle had to take me to school, and my aunt could not because she had to go to work earlier. So she would go to work, and then he would take me to school. And so he had to wake me up, and he would wake me up. And this is during the time where, I'm not sure, does he still like me,
Right.
or does he not, as a family member. And he came into my room to wake me up, and he started talking to me. So I'm thinking at this point, okay, he's not mad at me anymore.
Okay.
Then he starts holding my hand. And then I'm
Which is out of the norm.
out of the norm. And then I'm naive at this time because in my family, my father didn't really show he wasn't allowed to show me too much affection.
Okay.
So my dad would hug me, and my mom, if he hugged me too much, my mom would flip out. And she would say, don't hug her too much. You're hugging her too much. You can't hug her too much.
Wow.
So I didn't have, the affection was limited.
From your father.
From my father.
Right.
And when he did that, I wasn't sure if that was normal or not. I kind of thought something was off, but then I thought, and then my aunt, the tape of her, the recording in my head of her, oh, he's just drunk. So I thought, okay, well, touching my breast in the kitchen, she's writing it off as he's just drunk. And then
Saying it's okay because he's drunk.
because he's drunk, that kind of gave him the green light in my head with that. Now he's touching my hand, and I'm just thinking, okay, he was just drunk when he was feeling me up. Now he's touching my hand, he's sober. I guess.
What's going on?
Well, I don't know if it was right, if it was wrong. I just thought in my head, he does not mad at me anymore.
And that's all you wanted?
That's all I cared about. I
That's all
didn't
you
want him
cared
to be
about?
mad at me anymore.
Okay. So he starts off by coming in, visiting you in the bedroom, holding your hand, being affectionate to you, giving
Right.
you some feelings or emotions of love that you're craving or desiring. What happens next?
He takes me to school.
Okay.
I go to school. Next day, it continued again.
Same thing.
Same thing, conversation, holding hand. And then that escalated into, why don't you come into the bedroom?
His bedroom.
His bedroom. And
In the morning before
in the
going
morning,
to school? Okay.
and again, naive. He said, "Well, you just rest there, get some sleep, and then I'll wake you up when it's time to wake up. So you're not by yourself." And again, in my head, I'm naive. I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe this is normal. I didn't know if it was or not. I just really, all my focal point again is he's not mad at me anymore. And then when I got into bed, I'm in my pajamas, he's in his robe, and that is when the sexual abuse started happening. It was statutory rape.
Okay. For the audience, can you give us a definition of statutory rape?
Sure. Statutory rape, I would like to use my story as an example of statutory rape.
Okay.
A lot of people, when they hear rape, they think violence. They think getting held by knife point. They think beat, cornered,
Life being threatened.
life-threatening. This was manipulative. It was very manipulative. I was in his care, and even if I wasn't, an adult is not supposed to rape, have sex with a child.
Right.
So that is against the law. And in my case, I was in his care. You know, you are not supposed to have sex with a child, period.
Right. Let me interject something here real quick. What I'm perceiving is wrong no matter what. Just because he was your uncle, just because you were living there, he had no right to do what he did. Whether you put up a fight, whether you didn't put up a fight, it doesn't matter. Wrong is still wrong. And to condone somebody doing wrong makes you just as wrong as they are and should not be tolerated.
And the whole time I thought it was me. It was me. This was a relationship, and I am a problem. And then I also felt trapped. There was mixed emotions.
So I'm going to ask you some more tough questions,
Sure.
and I apologize in advance for doing so. So he rapes you. You don't put up a fight.
No, I
You
do.
let him do whatever he's going to do.
Right. And it's turning into a relationship where now I'm not treated like a kid anymore.
So
Now-
he changes.
He changes.
How he treats you.
Oh, it completely changed. No verbal lashes ever again after that.
Really?
So it was almost paying for love. I was paying for love.
From him.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a pretty high price to pay for love. Sorry for more difficult questions. Do you need a Kleenex?
No.
Okay. How long did this go on from your uncle?
Until I left in July.
So it started in January and went until you left in July, so 7 months-ish. And how often, how frequent was this?
He was pulling me out of school for lunch and meeting me for lunch and any chance he had, and would give the notes for an excuse.
To get you out of
to
class?
get me out of class,
Right.
yes.
So even during the middle of the day, whenever he felt like it, you were his sex slave, so to speak. Now, and here's more difficult questions, so my apologies.
No, you're fine.
You cooperated with all of this?
I cooperated with all of it.
You didn't fight, you didn't struggle.
And that's where a lot of the guilt comes into play and the shame, because I went along with it, and all to get love.
During this time, did you tell anybody what was going on? Did you talk to your aunt or try to talk to your aunt? Did you tell anybody at school, a counselor, a friend at school?
I told a friend at school.
And what did they say?
They just listened. And I begged not to say anything. And
A guy friend, a girlfriend?
A guy friend.
Okay.
And he didn't. He respected me. I knew if I told the counselor that I would be back home.
So you would have gone from what you thought was a loving environment back to a traumatic environment. And that was your fear.
I didn't know what to do. I was in a horrible situation, but then I wasn't sure which frying pan was worse. Was it going back home or was it staying there?
Okay. So now you go back home. How did that come about? Now, did you want to go back home at this time, or did you want to stay in New York with your uncle and be abused? And I know that's a harsh sounding question. And again, I'm sorry for the way it sounds and the way it comes across, but what was your mental state at that time? Did you want out? Were you looking forward to getting out, or were you trying to get out, or were you...
My mom made it appealing for me. My mom talked to me on the phone, and I don't know if she was intuitive on this or what, but she said, I want you to come home.
So she opened a door for you?
She opened it, and I said, I don't know if I can. Can I go to a Christian school? And so I can get that one-on-one attention. So
Right.
She promised me that she would change. That was the number one thing. She was going to change. She wasn't going to be mean to me anymore and yelling at me anymore. And she said she changed. And I asked, can I please go to a private Christian school so I can get that one-on-one attention? I really would like to do that. And she said yes. And I went home.
That was the catalyst for you to
Right.
be able to leave. Now, again, this is an extremely difficult subject to talk about, and I know this next question is going to be equally as difficult. Did you ever get pregnant and have to be forced into making an even worse decision, like abortion or something like that?
No, I was never pregnant.
Okay.
Ever.
All right. So you avoided that
Never
hurdle.
been pregnant actually in my life, but yes, never. I've never been pregnant.
Okay. Okay, so now you're leaving New York, going back to California. What's going on in your head with that transition?
Freedom. I felt free, that I was free from him. And before the plane took off, because he worked for the airlines, somehow he got on the plane and wanted to say goodbye to me. And it was so risky because he was being more than just an uncle to me on the plane. And I'm just thinking, someone must be seeing this. And he gave me a hug and started crying and then gave me a present. And it was a ring.
A ring?
A ring.
From your uncle?
From my uncle.
So, do you think he was in love with you?
No,
I mean, I
as
know
an
that's
adult, no.
No?
No.
So, what was the...
As a child, yes.
So when you were a child, you thought he was in love with you?
Yes.
And now as an adult, you don't think that was the case? Help me with that transition in thought. Why do you think differently now as an adult than you did when you were a child?
Because the whole thing is dysfunctional.
I agree.
Because you can't be in love like with dysfunction.
Well, it's not love.
Yes.
Right.
And that's why I say it.
Right.
Yeah.
When you take advantage of a child, it's not love, it's
Right.
abuse.
Exactly. And that's why I say he was not.
Okay. All right. Thanks for clarifying that for us.
No, that's fine.
All right. So you're on the plane takes off. You have this euphoric sense of freedom, but you know what's waiting for you in California. How does that make you feel? Are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that. I really believe at this point that my mom is changing.
Okay.
I believe my mom is changing. It's another fresh start, and I'm giving it a shot.
All right.
It seems more appealing.
So you. All right, so now you're on the plane. You're getting ready to head back to California. What's going through your head? What are you thinking about this next phase in your life?
I'm thinking that there are going to be changes. My mom promised that she was going to change. Maybe the time apart played an important part in her making changes, and also the time, to get away from a horrible situation. So I needed to get out of a horrible situation. My mom promised she would change, and she also mentioned that I can go to a private Christian school.
All right. Now, did you name the Christian school you wanted to go to her, or did she just pick one?
No, good question. She
Okay.
did pick one,
Okay.
and it's Cornerstone Christian School in Camarillo.
And did she enroll you when you got back?
She enrolled me when I got back.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you did get to go. She honored her commitment to
She
you.
did, yes.
Wow. So did you think mom had changed?
Yes,
Did she?
yes,
For how long?
a while.
Really?
Yes, she changed for quite some time. I mean, it was still yelling and screaming.
Oh, really? Okay.
But it wasn't verbal lashing like it used to be. It
Okay.
was a little different. The yelling and screaming was just like eating breakfast.
Just high volume
That's
stuff?
just high volume.
Okay. But not derogatory necessarily.
It wasn't derogatory.
Okay.
And most of the time I spent studying, a lot of studying. And everything was fine, for quite some time until I mentioned that I was sexually abused by my uncle.
So I understand that after getting back and getting settled into your new life, you started suffering from PTSD. When did that happen and start being a challenge or another problem that you had to overcome?
I would say in March and April.
Okay. And what triggered that PTSD? Because you got back in July, you stopped being molested by your uncle in July when you left, and now it's 8 months later. So you were fine up until then. What triggered that to start happening?
It was when I started becoming intimate with my boyfriend.
So that intimacy or that attempt to be intimate triggered everything,
PTSD.
the PTSD. What was that like? What were the feelings, the emotions that you were struggling with?
Guilt, shame, feeling like I needed to wear layers of clothes, especially when I survived victory. But I also felt it then too.
Okay. How did your boyfriend respond?
He knew I needed to get professional help. He knew I needed to get counseling.
So he tried to encourage you to do this?
He encouraged me to do it, and then when I reached out to an organization to help me, they wanted permission from my parents.
Before they'd accept you to counseling?
And then I had to report it.
To your parents?
I did report it to the police.
Oh, report it to the police?
Report. They were
Of the incident?
telling me in order to get counseling, I had to get permission from my parents, and I needed to report it to the police.
And those were challenges for you?
Yes, I didn't want to do that because I felt like it was my fault.
So you felt the incident with your uncle was your fault?
And I didn't want to report it to the police because I felt like I was responsible for it.
Okay. So you were taking ownership and
I was
responsibility
taking ownership
for all of it. Now, I understand mom and dad were extremely difficult for you to confront them with this challenge and this ordeal. Why don't you tell me a little bit about why that was so difficult and why you were so fearful of talking with them and letting them know that you had experienced this kind of trauma at the hands of a relative?
When I was 14 years old, I was date raped. So I was seeing a boy when I was 14, and he was pressuring me into having sex with him, and I didn't want to. And he knew about my family situation, so he was playing on that. And he was making me feel guilty because he knew that he could, because I was always wanting.
Manipulating you.
Right, he was manipulating me because he knew I wanted to have love from family members.
Right.
And I couldn't get it, and he knew that I would pretty much do whatever he wanted to get that. And I said yes at first, and then I changed my mind, and he said, if you didn't, I will rape you.
He threatened to do?
He did. He said that. If you don't go along with it, then I will.
Was he your same age or was he older?
He was 16.
He was 6, so he's a couple years older.
Right. And I was screaming.
So you were fighting back at this time?
I was screaming.
Okay.
I wasn't fighting, but I was screaming. And
Okay.
so he knew that I was obviously in pain, and he wouldn't stop. And when I confronted my mother with it, she said, did you fight? And I said no, and she said it wasn't rape.
Oh my God.
And so I had that playing in my head. And so when my boyfriend wanted me, to get counseling, and I had to get permission from my parents, I was reluctant to do it because of that.
Right, because you'd be exposing yourself to the same thing that happened 2 years, 3 years
I
earlier.
really didn't want history to repeat itself.
Right.
And now it's worse, because then I was screaming, and now
You did nothing.
I did nothing.
All right, so your boyfriend actually is the one that goes to mom and dad and tells them you were sexually molested by your uncle. Were you there at the time?
No, I wasn't. I pieced it together when my dad came into my room and said, what is this about your uncle?
Oh my goodness. So did he do it without your knowledge?
I didn't know until then.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So he went and confided in mom and dad, told them of the story that you had told him and confided in him. And then now dad comes into your room and says...
I knew he wanted to do something about it, and I knew he was desperate for me to get help, but I didn't.
Your boyfriend?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying
Yeah.
that. I just didn't know he was going to do it.
Okay.
And he did. And that, that is mature for a 16, 17-year-old to
absolutely.
do that. So I'm not, frowning upon that at all. He did the right thing. He
Right.
did the normal thing.
Right. Right. That shows a lot of love and care and compassion to be able to take that responsibility on. It shouldn't have been his to take on, but yeah, I can see where he was coming from. All right, so dad comes into your room.
And now it's a trial.
Is it?
It's a trial.
And you're on trial.
I'm on trial.
Okay.
I'm the perpetrator.
What did you do wrong again? It's History 101.
And so now I'm the perpetrator, and you need to prove it.
Prove it.
Right. He kept saying that over and over. And why are you just telling us about this now? He would say that over and over again. Why now? Why didn't you tell us before? Would it have made a difference? No, probably not.
So was dad angry at you?
I'm thinking he just thinks I'm a liar. I'm making this up. And prove it. What do I have to prove it with? The only thing I had was that ring.
And then it's your word against his word.
And I gave him the ring. They took the ring, and then that was it. And I just started getting angry and sad and depressed. I was crying a lot. I wasn't functioning. It was just horrible to just go back home from school.
All right, I'm going to take a step back again and ask you another question, because I asked you a question earlier about, did you confide in anybody when you were back in New York and this was all going on?
Right.
Did your aunt ever know about this, or did you ever talk to her about this, or did she ever suspect something was going on?
She knew he was cheating on her.
But not with
But
you?
she didn't know he was cheating on her with me.
Oh, wow. So she suspected other women, just not you.
Just not me.
Okay. Did she talk to you about it?
She did. She did confide in me with that.
And how did that conversation go?
She said it was somebody who just graduated from high school. And so I guess he admitted to cheating, but said it was someone that just graduated from high school.
Oh my God. Wow. So in a way, he was saying it was you, but he just made you be a little older so that she wouldn't suspect.
Right. And I remember when the abuse was happening with him, he kept saying, if you say anything to anyone, I'll go to jail.
So he knew it was wrong.
He knew it was wrong.
And he kept threatening you with that.
He kept saying, don't do that. Yes.
All right. So let's go back to California. Your dad comes into your room. He doesn't believe you. He wants you to prove what happened. I'm not sure how you can prove what happened, unless you videotaped it, I guess. Maybe that would be enough evidence. I don't know. So now that's Dad's reaction. What's Mom's reaction like?
Mom would flip-flop back and forth. It was either she didn't believe me, I'm making it up, or I'm just wild. Because I overheard a conversation that she had with my aunt, said, I told you she's wild. What did I tell you? And when she did that, I got angry. And I'm just trying to paint the picture because, you know, you'll hear from parents, my child took a toilet seat and slammed it so hard it cracked, but you don't hear what happened prior to that. So I'm reacting normally to abnormal behavior. So I hear that and I go into the bathroom and I get angry and I crack the toilet. And I don't mean to crack it. I wish I had a punching bag, but I didn't at the time.
You slammed it down?
I slammed it down and I cracked it.
And that precipitated what? That triggered what?
More, you mean what was the repercussion for that? More punishment.
From Mom?
From Mom and Dad.
So Mom was nice to start off with when you got back, but once she found out about this, she went back to her old behavior? Or
Right.
much worse than her old behavior?
Much worse
Really?
than her old behavior.
Because now you're just an evil daughter
I
that's
felt that it was
uncontrollable.
much worse because now I'm just a bad kid. Worse than before.
So Mom now goes back to her old ways, treats you even worse than she did before. What are you feeling like now?
Defeated. I feel defeated. I can't focus. I don't know how I got through that junior year with my grades so high, but I'm trying to study and memorize The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe with all of this going on.
Right. Now, you were going to a Christian school. Were you able to talk to anybody there? Talk to a counselor?
That's a good question. I did. I finally got a counselor to meet me at the school, and she met me at the school, and it was helping. But everything she was telling me, you know, it wasn't your demeanor, it wasn't how you dressed, it wasn't anything you said, it was his fault. She said it was not my fault over and over again. And so she was trying to help me see a different perspective.
Right. And build you up.
And every time I would go home, it would just, all of it would
You got a different message.
It was unraveled. All of the work that she was doing with counseling would destroyed. And I dreaded going home every night.
All right, so Mom and Dad find out, and they don't take the news very well. They see you as the same old bad child,
Right.
bad seed that you've always been. And they retaliate and do something horrific. Why don't you describe and let us know what that was and how that came about.
They told me that they were going to take me to see a psychiatrist.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, great, I'm going to get some counseling after all. Our whole family is going to finally get counseling. And they took me into the car and said it's going to be a while. He's located far away, and they didn't tell me where, but
Okay.
they said it was going to be a drive.
Okay.
And I pretty much fell asleep in the back of the car. And in my head, I thought, they can't possibly be taking me to the reform school that was locked in because my grades are good. I wasn't on drugs.
And what's the story with...
This was going on in my head. And is a friend of mine since 8th grade, and she was locked up in the same reform school.
Oh.
And she told me how horrific it was. And
So in your mind, you're saying, no, this can't happen, this can't be the case.
But she also blamed herself for it. She said I was a bad kid and this program changed me.
Oh.
And so she was on the brainwash stage.
She was reformed.
But when she was, exactly, and when she described what was going on. So I said, no, that's abuse. That's not right.
Right.
And then in my head when we were driving to Ramona, California, I thought they cannot possibly be taking me here. There's no way. And as soon as I popped my head up, there was a 12-foot fence with barbed wire. And I could not get out.
And
I was trapped.
This place was called Victory
Christian Academy.
With a 12-foot fence and barbed wire. Now,
And I'm still thinking psychiatrist at this
Right.
point, trying to be a little optimistic. I'm thinking, okay, this is a little odd for a psychiatrist to be in an FBI.
Right. A prison facility or something, yeah.
It looked like it was actually an old FBI.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. All right. So now you're at Victory Christian Academy. What was your understanding of their role or their purpose in this world? What was their job? What were they supposed to be doing or accomplishing with troubled teens?
Well, in the intake, my mom and dad were sitting on the couch, and I was standing, and the preacher said, "You're here for a year. Your parents placed you in my care for a year because you've caused them nothing but trouble."
Oh my God.
That's when I knew I wasn't at the psychiatrist.
Okay. That was the red flag?
That was the red flag right there.
Okay.
I was trying to be optimistic. And then I couldn't believe it. I was so angry. I said, how could you do this to me? How could you
Mom
do
and Dad
this?
are still there?
They're still there. How could you
Okay.
do this to me? How could you do this to me? And I didn't cry. I didn't want to give them that satisfaction. And in my head, I thought, my boyfriend is going to come pick me up, and his parents.
And rescue you.
And rescue me. This is just a temporary thing.
Your knight in shining armor.
I'm thinking he's going to come and pick me up. He's not going to stand for this.
Right.
And two women said to me, two staff said, come with me and I'll make you feel at home.
How did Mom and Dad respond to your adamant response of saying, hey, you can't do
Nothing.
this to me? They said nothing?
Nothing. They said nothing. I remember it as if it was yesterday. They said nothing to me.
Wow. Okay, so you got two staff members going to make
Two
you
staff,
feel at home?
they're going to make me feel at home. And I thought, let me just go along with the program. My boyfriend will pick me up. He'll know I'm missing. He'll come find me.
All right, we'll get into that a little bit later. So these two staff take you away.
And to
then what
delouse.
happens? Oh, delouse you?
They deloused me. I was told to get into the shower with lice medicated shampoo. They never checked to see if I had lice.
Right. They just automatically did that. That was just
That was
protocol
automatic.
for them.
Automatic. Every girl that came in, lice medicated shampoo.
Oh my goodness.
So I had to wash with that. And then after that, they said, your mom has clothes for you. And I thought, clothes for me? She never buys me clothes.
Right.
I bought my clothes with money that I worked for. And I was going through the luggage, and I thought, oh my God, she splurges now that I'm in a lockdown prison. Where was she when I had good grades in school? Where was that present?
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, a lockdown reform school. So I'm talking to myself and being a smart aleck while I'm doing it, but that was how I was dealing with my anger. And staff could hear me, and they said, watch your attitude, over and over again.
Really?
You can't talk like that. So here you have...
You were vocalizing this. It wasn't just in your head?
Oh,
it was,
no, I
okay.
was vocalizing it. I
All
was
right.
pissed.
Okay.
So then they kept saying, watch your attitude. And I thought, well, this is pretty tame considering my parents just took an honor roll student and locked them into a prison camp
Right.
without doing the crime.
Right.
And they said, do you want to go to the Get Right room? And I kind of had an inkling of what that was from
Right.
the Get Right room.
Okay.
It was the room of isolation.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yes. Do you want to go to the Get Right room? I said, sure. I want to go. When can I go?
Wow.
And the reason why I volunteered is because I couldn't vocalize how I felt with these people or anyone. Let me just be by myself. I wanted to be by myself. Little did I know they locked girls in there for days, weeks, and months at a time.
So how long were
I
you?
thought it was just going to be a half an hour or an hour.
Oh. How long were you in the Get Right room?
8 hours. And the reason why I was let out so early is the mere fact that I wanted to stay in.
So it wasn't punishment anymore from their perspective.
From their perspective.
It was a trip to Club Med.
Right.
Because you were getting freedom from them, and interesting.
And they turned it around and said, you're coming out. But that was my saving grace.
Okay. Now, we were talking off camera, and you mentioned something that I want to touch on. And I'm not telling you that in advance that I'm going to touch on this, but I want to touch on this. You had some you told me that in your book you talk about your frank conversations with God while you're locked up in this place. Tell me about some of those frank conversations, because I think what the point I want people to make and understand is that God is not afraid of your frank conversations. He's not afraid of them. He knows what you're feeling. He knows what you're going through. He knows the situation you're in. He's okay with you being open and honest and communicating with him, because the first thing you're doing is you're communicating with him. You're telling him how you feel, and those are raw emotions and feelings. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what some of those were and what they looked like?
The relationship I had with God back then was very close.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've ever read God, It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume.
No, I haven't.
Okay. Teenage book,
Okay.
usually geared towards girls,
Okay.
young girls. It's like that to the 10th power in my book.
Really?
So I'm talking to God,
Okay.
but I'm also saying, get me the hell out of here. Get me the FK out of here now, especially when I'm seeing a girl duct taped to a chair, handcuffed, her hands handcuffed behind her, and duct tape on her mouth, duct tape around her in the chair, and
At a
on her ankles.
Christian academy, they're
Right.
treating other human beings like prisoners.
Worse. Like a camp.
Oh my God.
It was awful. And what was worse is I couldn't just leave. I couldn't just be
Right,
by
you weren't
myself.
in charge of checking yourself out, like, oh, this is a mistake, I don't belong here.
Right, or I'm going to my room, my bunk. We didn't have our own rooms. We had dorms and bunks, so I couldn't just go to my bunk. I had to stay there and watch.
And
And
you were
girls were participating in saying something derogatory towards her.
to the girl in the chair?
Right, so they had...
So they
They were all
banded together.
in a circle. She's in the circle. Their Bibles are open. Now, can you imagine
God,
as a
no.
Christian,
So you're just making this horrific
as a
scene that I
non-Christian
have.
seeing this,
Oh my God.
It's a different perspective. But as a Christian seeing this, you're used to a whole different type of God and a type of organization and
So they're condoning.
congregation, and then you go into this place,
Right,
and
and-
it's nothing like what you've seen before.
Absolutely horrific. So they're condoning and instigating public shaming. I want to just make sure I
Right,
get this
it was
correctly.
orchestrated by a staff member.
Orchestrate. So they're putting a girl in the center of the room, duct tape to a chair, tied to a chair, and duct tape over the mouth so she can't respond.
Right,
And then everybody, all the other girls around her,
or saying something derogatory
and with Bibles open.
with Bibles open and
and
backing it up
they're
with
instigating
scripture.
this, condoning this, and oh my goodness.
So can you imagine triggers that girl is going to have or has
Oh,
had every
absolutely.
time a verse is read or the Bible is read or someone from the church saying something about Christ or God, she'll have that association for the rest of her life.
Is that what happened to you?
Yes. A hymn will never be the same again.
A Bible verse will never be
A
the
Bible
same.
verse will never be the same again. And it's all an association. But it doesn't mean that, my spirituality is lost.
Well, God is not less real to you because of it, but His Word or Christian music or those kinds of things become triggers to trauma, past traumas,
Right.
rather than a comfort like they should be, like they're meant to be. They've been destroyed.
It could have been the happiest place on earth, and if a child is abused at the happiest place on earth, we know where that is.
Sure.
In Anaheim, California.
Yes.
And, one of the songs could trigger something.
How horrific. All right, so you're there, you're in this academy, you have no way out. Do you get to communicate with anybody? Can you write letters? Can you call anybody, talk to anybody on your phone? Can you get in touch with your boyfriend to tell him, hey, come on your white horse and rescue me or anything like that?
This was back in the 80s, so there was no
No cell phone. So,
there was no cell phone.
so we have to take ourselves back.
Let's go
I
back
think they
a
still
little
had those
bit.
dial things, didn't they?
They sure did.
Yeah. And they were connected to walls
I
or something
remember
like
that.
that? Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
And don't forget the long cord.
And the cord, yeah, you couldn't go you could only go as far as the
Only
cord
so
would let
far.
you. Okay.
Had to
all
get the
right.
long cord.
I vaguely remember them. Yeah.
Let's bring you back.
Okay, yes.
So there
All
was
right.
no payphone. There was no internet because it was back in that day. But
Sure.
today's programs, they just confiscate everything.
So they took
And there's no.
well, right, you
they-
didn't even have a phone to take,
Yeah,
but
they confiscate
Right.
everything. You have no access to any phones.
and they didn't
no
encourage
mail.
They didn't encourage you to write a letter or anything like that?
They encourage you to write your parents twice a week, but I had a sneaking suspicion. My intuition told me that
They
they're going to
read
read
it?
it. They're going to read it. And I asked my helper, my buddy, we'll get into that later.
Okay.
Do they read the mail? Yes. Can I write someone else other than my parents? No. Oh, you're kidding me. I can't write my boyfriend a letter, someone from the outside world to help me? Nobody. I could not write anybody.
So
I couldn't
it-
communicate with anyone.
It was prison. It was a concentration camp.
Minimum and maximum security prison. I could have gotten an attorney. I could have made a phone call. And I could have had, what are their visits like? I don't know. I haven't been to prison.
Right.
But what is it? Once a week? Twice a week? Who knows?
I have no
Did
idea.
anyone
Yeah.
gone to prison? Okay,
No.
I'm sorry. A lot more than Victory Christian Academy.
Right. Wow. So how long did this go on for? How long were you at Victory?
8 months.
8 months. So and you went
was-
in and when did you go in?
July.
July. So
Everything happens in July.
good thing you weren't born in July. So boyfriend encourages you in May. So March you start having the PTSD. May he encourages
confronts
you. He confronts mom and dad. July mom and dad ship you off to Victory Christian Academy. So you're there from July until when?
March.
And why March?
Easter.
Easter.
My dad said, "We forgive you because it's Easter, and
Oh my
that's why we're
God.
taking you out. The prodigal daughter returns.
But we forgive you.
We forgive you." And at that
So
point,
there was no accountability, no responsibility from them at
I
all.
think I wanted to slug him mentally,
Right.
but I didn't. I never said a word. I was so terrified that they were going to send me back to that place. I just didn't say anything at all. If they would have taken me back there, I am not joking, I would have opened the car door
And jumped
and jumped out no matter how fast that car was going. I am not joking.
Wow.
And that's how horrific these places are.
And it's like parents are giving these places permission to abuse their children like this. And do you think they know about it?
I don't think my parents, I'm going to give them,
You stand up for them.
I'm going to stand up for them regarding this.
Right.
They didn't know I was going to be abused.
What do you think they
I
thought
think
was going to
that
happen?
They were happy that finally someone was on their side. It's now the child's fault versus when I went to a counselor, the counselor was finding out that there was fault with them and that maybe they needed to change their parenting. And they didn't like that. And this preacher promised them that I was going to change. And they liked the fact that it wasn't on them.
So this academy was being run by a pastor, preacher,
Right.
doing this, treating other human beings this way. All right, so you've went to the Christian Academy in July. You were there until when? When did you get free
March.
from that? March.
March, uh-huh.
So what happens in March for you to gain your freedom?
They picked me up, and it was unexpected. No one told me ahead
you
of time.
weren't even aware of this?
I wasn't even aware. I was vacuuming because
Okay.
we had to do labor.
Okay.
And it was either vacuuming, digging ditches out in the fields, working on the church, construction work. You get the idea. We were all working without pay.
Slave labor.
Slave labor.
Right.
It's 1861 at Victory Christian Academy.
Wow. Okay.
So at any rate, I'm vacuuming and a staff member taps me on the shoulder and said, "Come with me." I stop what I'm doing. I go with her and we go to my dorm. Pack all your stuff. Your parents are here to pick you up. And it was very cold. It wasn't, I'm gonna miss you.
Right.
Not that I wanted her to miss me. It was just pack your stuff. Your parents are here to pick you up. I packed my things and I met my parents where they originally dropped me off
In the intake room.
in the intake room, and that was it.
What did mom and dad say to you? Why were they there? Why were they coming to get you now after 8 months?
My father said the reason why we're picking you up out early is because it's Easter and this is a time of forgiveness, and we forgive you for what you did. We forgive you.
Oh my goodness.
The prodigal daughter returns.
So they forgive you for letting your uncle rape you? Or for being a bad child? Or for arguing
Or
with them?
all of the
Or-
above. I have no idea.
Wow.
And I imagine it was all of the above.
So they're, and I'm being, forgive me for being judgmental on the outside, listening to your story on the outside, but it appears that they are refusing to be accountable or take responsibility for anything that happened to you
Sure,
at all.
exactly. And at that point, when my father said that, I was so angry. You can only imagine being locked up without doing crime.
In prison, not
In
just locked
prison,
up, but in prison.
without
right.
doing any crime, had good grades in school, overachiever, and then that, I wanted to slug him, metaphorically speaking. I did not want to get sent back to that place again, so I kept my mouth shut
And just
and
drove home with them.
just drove home with them, yes.
So when you got put in Victory Christian Academy, you were sure your boyfriend was going to come and rescue you. You get back home, where's your boyfriend?
With another girlfriend.
Ouch.
And how I found that out is on my first visit, you couldn't see your parents for 3 months. This is really hard, but I'm very detached. My mother and father came to visit me after 3 months. You're not allowed to see your parents for 3 months. That's a red flag, by the way.
Wow.
Not that I wanted to see them. I preferred
Right.
not to. I would rather have seen someone else. And then it was 1 month after that, once a month. No phone calls. I didn't make any phone calls at all during the whole time back to my parents. When my mom and I were talking in the hall, my dad was there. My mom whispered in my ear, "Your boyfriend has a girlfriend," and I saw them because I was over the house cleaning. And she whispered it in my ear because she knew she couldn't talk about him. I wasn't allowed to mention his name, by the way.
So you knew in advance?
Yes, I did, but I'll tell you how I coped with that in a minute.
Okay.
I was not allowed to say his name at all.
While you were in the
While I was
academy?
in the
Okay.
academy, I couldn't speak of him, talk about any of my past, about anything,
Right.
any friends that I had. The only thing I could talk about is God and the Bible, and that's it, and what God's doing in my life. That was it.
Wow.
I couldn't mention Amy Grant. I couldn't mention a song on the radio. It was a different kind of world. It wasn't anything that you would even imagine.
All in the name of God.
All in the name of God. And I wanted to play the piano. I made the mistake when I first got there because I wanted to play the piano. I didn't know how. I wanted to learn how to play the piano while I was there
Right.
to heal from being locked into this place.
Sure.
So it was a coping mechanism. And it would remind me of my boyfriend because he played the piano. So I was doing it in the name of him, and I was trying to cope. And I made the mistake by saying, yes, because it reminds me of my boyfriend. And they said, do not mention his name ever again. You are not allowed to even speak of him. And because of the fact that it reminds you of him, you cannot learn how to play the piano.
So, and of course, I'm on the outside listening to all of this stuff, and now I have a close, personal, intimate relationship with God. So I know what God looks like.
Right.
And I think the thing that I find appalling in your story is that people, under the guise of a Christian name and the Christian Bible and Bible verses and Christian music and all that kind of stuff, are saying they represent God, and that God's going to hate you or doesn't like you or doesn't want anything to do with you because you're not the right way or you're not conducting yourself the right way, and you better get in line. However, when you know God or when you know Jesus, that Jesus is nothing like that. And Jesus would never do what these people did. He would never condone doing to you what these people did under his name.
Right.
And there's a lot of that
There
going
is
on.
no judgment.
There's no judgment.
With Jesus. However,
No reconciliation with
Victory
Jesus.
Christian Academy is a whole different story.
Yes. Nothing like Jesus.
Right.
Although they're trying to pull themselves off as if they are associated with Jesus by calling themselves Christian.
But even as a Christian girl going through this program, because it's a Christian's perspective on this place.
Right.
After a while, you start believing that you're not good enough
For
for
God.
God. So even though you know where your heart is,
Oh no.
when you are told over and over and over again how you are unfit to be a Christian, you're unfit to be a Christian.
God
Oh,
doesn't want you.
It was a constant you constantly would hear it, and maybe not in those words, and maybe in those words. It was Jezebel, thieves, liars, homewreckers. We were told this all the time.
My goodness.
And that we were heathens over and over and over again. You start believing it.
So their whole objective is to destroy your self-esteem,
Right.
who you think you are. Even worse yet, who God thinks you are.
So going through all of this, then I get that visit from my mom. So you can only imagine. 3-month visit. After 3 months, I finally see my parents that I really didn't want to see.
Right.
Here's my mom whispering in my ear, your boyfriend has a girlfriend, and I saw them together and he's happy. If I could be myself and my soul wasn't taken from me, I would have yelled and screamed or tried to get away from her or started crying or reacting. I would have done something.
That had to be painful.
It was so painful. I did nothing. I shut down. I wasn't allowed to. If I did, I would get punished and I would be back to square one. There were repercussions. So
And I'm going to put myself in your shoes for a second. I'm guessing, and this is probably how I would have dealt with the situation if I was there. I'm guessing your love for your boyfriend and that relationship was probably the only thing keeping you going through this whole thing.
exactly.
Am I correct?
And now it's wiped out from
And
under
she
me.
destroyed it in one word.
She destroyed it and I didn't react. And the moment I didn't react, then another staff said, how is Jeneen? What do you think of Jeneen to my father? And he said, oh, it's a 180-degree turnaround. Why? Because I didn't react when my mom was being abusive to me.
Oh
Now-
my goodness.
Now it's at 180 degree. Yeah, okay, you got what you paid for. So basically with these programs, and I'm trying to paint a picture
Right.
for people that don't understand these programs, this is what I'm fighting for here.
Right.
This is what goes on in these places. So now you're stuffing a child's, any way they feel about their parents, you're stuffing it inside. They're not allowed to talk about
Or
it.
voice it or
Voice
express
it,
themselves.
express themselves. They're nothing, they're untouchable.
Destroy their self-esteem. Who cares?
But yay, you created a Stepford
child.
Good for you with a remote control. That's what you're getting. And I'll tell you one thing, when that remote control, and when the child gets a hold of the remote control and takes the batteries out, their parents are in for a rude awakening.
So they take you home. You already know your boyfriend's not going to be waiting there for you.
In my head, I was optimistic. I am an optimistic person. That's how I survived. I
probably,
was,
just so you know, I probably would have done the same thing. No, she still loves me, or like, you know, he still loves me. When he sees me, he's going to want me back.
He still loves
Right.
me. That's what kept me going, and that's why I talk about the love story, because the whole time, that love story, that's what held me. That's what held me.
That's what you clung on. That was
That's
your
what-
anchor to keep your
I
sanity.
had to have hope.
Right.
If I didn't,
It would have destroyed you.
so that night, when I went to my dorm, I wanted to kill myself. And I need to talk about this because I want to talk about this because that's what these places do. And yes, my mom did trigger it by saying something cruel to me in my ear.
Sure.
But look at how the program's designed. Why can't I talk about my boyfriend? Why couldn't I communicate with him?
So you hit on another nerve that touches a lot of people. And it may not have been full-blown depression in your case, but it was the desire to commit suicide,
Right.
to take your own life.
It was my environment. It was, you've heard of nature versus nurture, right? All mine is nurture.
Right.
It's not nature. It's my environment.
So, and I'm going to apologize for the insensitivity of the questions again. I'm going to dive into why didn't you commit suicide? Was there just no opportunity, no weapons, no...
I wanted to take the sheet and put it over my head, and I did. And I was thinking about suffocating. I didn't know any other way. And while I was doing that, I thought, I'm going to go to hell.
Because God doesn't love you.
God doesn't love me, because I guess that's the one good thing that
saved
preacher did that saved me.
Because you didn't want to go to hell.
Because I didn't want to go to hell, because he convinced me that I was going to go to hell. So that and my optimism of, no, what if I have a chance that it's going to get better? And that's one of the things that my boyfriend kept telling me. It's going to get better through this whole thing. It's going to get better. Don't worry, it'll get better. And so I had that ringing in my ears. And it was that plus the fear of hell, that more the optimism.
So you managed to cling to hope.
Hope. That's what got me through.
All right. So you survive yet another traumatic incident, and you get home. Now what? What does this next phase of life look like for you at home?
It's not anything I expected. My boyfriend calls me 1 week later, and I didn't put up a fight. I didn't say, can we talk? Let's work this out. Do you want to find out what happened to me in this place? I was a bit aggressive before, and now suddenly I am a completely different person.
Ouch.
I'm submissive, I'm defeated, I'm not fighting for...
Right, you're tired of the battle and the fight and everybody feeling against you, I'm guessing.
I feel that, if he feels this way for that person, then he feels that way for that person. I don't want to make someone
love you.
Love me.
Right.
So I didn't fight, but I also felt, as an adult now, I feel that should have been clarified. I feel that I should have at least worked it out, or maybe not work it out in my favor of getting back together again, but have the closure.
Right.
And I didn't have that closure at that time.
All right, so I understand now, shortly after you get out, shortly after you graduate high school, you leave home.
Yes.
You move out.
At 17, I graduate from high school, and I have to say that I barely graduated from high school. I didn't want to study anymore, and it wasn't a retaliation or trying to get back at anyone. I know it's in my best interest. It was in my best interest to study,
right,
and to excel in school so I can move to another level. But I was so defeated. I didn't want to do anything. I just didn't give a crap anymore.
Lost the will to live?
Yeah.
That's sad, right? And you're only 17.
And I'm 17. But what happened was my mom came into my room and said, "You're failing." Well, gee, I wasn't failing before you sent me to a reform school.
Weren't you a
good grades.
honor roll student or something like that? Yeah.
Now all of a sudden I'm failing and you're concerned? What are you going to do? Send me back to the reform school again?
Right. Prison?
So what's next?
Right.
So she said, the office said, if you pass the GED test, then you can graduate. Perfect. When is it? She told me the day. I went in, I took the GED test, I passed, and I graduated.
Wow.
And that's how I graduated. But that's the point I'm making, is when these girls or kids, there's homes for boys,
right,
come out of these places, they just cannot focus. They've been
Right.
abused. They don't want to try anymore.
Right. Hope is gone.
Hope is gone.
Yeah. All right. So then you move out. When did you move out? How after you graduated? How long after you graduated?
I started getting counseling at the high school, Newbury Park High School.
Okay.
They offered counseling there. So I started seeing a counselor, and I reached out to a friend and I told her my situation. And she offered to have me come stay with her until I got on my feet. So her family invited me into their home. And it was, it was comfortable enough for them, but not for one more person. And I ended up staying in Kara's room, and which was very nice. And that's how,
So-
that was the stepping stone to get me to the next level. I stayed there for 6 months.
So was that the start of your healing process?
It was the start of my healing process.
Okay.
And then from there, I started receiving counseling with RASAC, Rape and Sexual Abuse
Right.
Center.
Okay. And they were extremely helpful in your process of healing and recovering.
Yes, they were.
Okay. Now you and I talked a little bit about this offline on the challenges in healing, right? When you're traumatized like this. I mean, if you take your story from beginning to end, you've got mom and dad emotionally and physically abusing you, and then you've got an uncle sexually abusing you, and then you've got a Victory Christian Academy, a rehabilitation center, emotionally and physically abusing you as well, under the name of God no less, in the name of God no less. And your boyfriend, who you thought loved you, has left you. It looks pretty bleak, pretty dramatic. The only way I know of to heal from something like that is forgiveness. How were you able to overcome all of that pain, all of that anger, all of that frustration, everything you must have been feeling inside in order to be the beautiful person you are today? How did that happen?
I know that I make mistakes, and I would want someone to forgive me, so I'm more apt to forgiving others. And that's how I look at it. So what would I want someone to do for me? I would want someone to forgive me if I messed up, and I mess up.
You're not perfect?
No,
Oh, okay.
I'll be damned.
None of us are. That's okay. You're in good company.
But I'm not going to walk in the line of fire either. So I did forgive my parents, and it took about 2 or 3 years to come around, and I did. Someone close to me passed away, and as soon as they passed away, it was almost like I died too. And I was on a different plane.
Right.
So I would literally go into my car, and anyone who maybe had did something to me, or I felt that did something to me, I was confronting and just saying, I forgive you, or talking to them.
Right.
And I did that. I did that with my parents, and I did that with a few other people.
Now you bring up a good point in that, and a lot of people misunderstand the purpose or the value in forgiveness. They think forgiveness is for the person that hurt you. And in reality, forgiveness is not for them.
It's for you.
It's for you, exactly. Because God doesn't want, and remember in the Bible, God says forgiveness is a command. It's not a request, it's a command. You are ordered or told you must forgive. If you don't forgive others, then how can I forgive you, right? That's the scenario Jesus uses. And the reason he does it that way is because if you hang on to that anger and that bitterness and that resentment and that unforgetfulness or unforgiveness, then you're basically holding in poison. And you're poisoning yourself with all of that stuff.
Right.
So by you either knowingly or unknowingly...
I'm not going by commandment.
Right.
I'll just tell you that. I'm not going by the commandment. I'm going by just because of the mere fact that I mess up and I want someone to forgive me. And how can I have someone forgive me if I can't forgive
But that was
someone else?
probably one of the wisest things you did. Letting that all that anger and all that bitterness and all that resentment and all that hatred, letting it go is probably the thing that saved you most and allowed you to continue that healing process with other things.
But I'm also not going to be a doormat either. So I will not put myself in harm's way.
That's a good point. And I'm glad you brought it up.
I protect myself.
No, I'm so glad you brought it up. So forgiveness, a lot of people will think forgiveness is forgive and forget. Well, no. But the Bible never says anything about forgive and forget, right? Your analogy is perfect. I'm not going to be a doormat. You can forgive. God commands you to forgive, and you should forgive. But that forgiveness is for you, so you don't hold that resentment in. But it's also, don't be a doormat. Don't put yourself in the line of fire and allow other people to misuse you or abuse you again. Don't give them the power or the authority or the ability to hurt you, right?
Exactly.
Stop the hurt by just avoiding them and the situation.
It's not an invitation to abuse me some more.
Correct. Yes. Don't empower them to do that.
Exactly.
So
I don't resent. I'm sorry. Do you?
no. Go ahead.
I don't have ill will towards them, and I don't have any animosity towards them. And what I'm doing today with the show is not to attack them, but to try to convey that this is what happened to me, and if a child can identify with it, there's hope.
Right.
That you can recover from it, that you can heal from it.
Right.
And that's my main purpose. It's not to get back at my parents or anything like that, or any other family members. It's strictly on the basis of helping someone else.
Well, and I think you expose something in that there are parents out there that need to hear this story or see this story that can possibly relate to treating their children the way your parents treated you. And they can see this and say, oh, it's wrong. And they may not be realizing that what they're doing is wrong, but now seeing this story, hearing your message,
they realize it is.
They realize it is. And it's doing more damage. Those little verbal barbs and those little, screaming or yelling matches, or there's condescending comments or whatever, they do more damage than they realize.
Right. And that's what my book is about. I'm really digging into the verbal abuse and how damaging it can be. What is going on in a child's mind when you're being attacked verbally?
Right. All right. Very good. You've been through a lot, and there's a lot to be learned, and I'm sure you've learned a lot. There's some advice or some red flags you can give others for what you went through to try to help them in spotting or identifying others that may be going through the same thing. What would some of those be?
Sure. Some of the red flags are, if you can't see your child for months at a time, that is definitely a red flag.
Right.
If you can't just drop up out of nowhere on the property at any given time, that's a red flag.
Okay.
Where are the phones at? Is there a community phone that everyone uses? Where is that? And can the children use the phone? Do they have access to that?
Right. What about letters and communication?
Letters and communication, if a child is writing you a letter and things are crossed out.
Red flag.
Red flag, they're monitoring it.
Right, and they're editing it.
They're editing it, so the child can't tell you at all that they're being abused.
Right.
Because they're crossing it out. When you do see your child on a visit and they're very vague with you and they're not really specific, or all they talk about is God and the Bible and what God's doing in their life, but nothing else.
Red flag.
I'm sorry, but that's a red flag too.
All right, good. Now, I understand that California Congressman Adam Schiff has proposed a bill in Congress to bring in some accountability and oversight to some of these organizations that are rehabilitating teens and stuff like that. Can you tell me a little bit about what that bill entails, and what are some of the
Sure.
things that we could get out of that bill being passed?
It's called Stop Child Abuse and Residential Programs Teens Act.
Okay.
And what this bill will do is provide oversight in these programs.
And accountability, right?
And accountability,
Okay.
licensing, having licensed medical staff present. It will allow children to have a phone access, a hotline to call if there's an emergency.
Or if there's an issue of abuse or something going on,
Exactly.
they have a way
An
to
abuse
communicate
hotline.
that. Right.
Exactly. They have access to that. And they need to be able to, provide food for the children. I mean, I'm talking these places, it's starvation, medical malpractice, and beatings that are going on, and then shock treatment with conversion therapies.
Wow.
I mean, this is real.
Right.
I mean,
and
this-
it's going on in the United
Right.
States
This
today.
bill is not fluff.
Right.
There's a reason why we're trying to pass this bill.
Right.
It's real. This is what's going on in our country.
All right. So we want to encourage others to partner with you to hopefully help get these kinds of laws passed. What are some of the things they can do to partner with you to accomplish this?
Sure, they can write their congressman regarding this bill. You can also visit sia-now.org. Again, sia-now.org. And you can also visit my website, which is piecesofvictory.com.
Okay. You can get more information about
Right.
it.
It's almost like Mission Highway way to, wilderness camps, reform schools, rehabilitation programs, survivors, articles, films, books.
Okay. Now, if they've got questions and they want to ask you a question, or they want to get some more information from you personally, can they email you from the website
Sure,
as well?
they can email me from the website.
You're okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, and you'll answer their questions.
Yes.
and guide and direct their question however it needs to go.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Now, if they're in California, they could even call Adam and say, let me encourage you to support this bill. And if they're not in California, they could call their congressman or write their congressman, say, hey, I want to encourage you to do something, to stand with Adam and support this bill when he introduces it. And let's make this happen.
Sure, and I encourage you to pull off survivor stories off of my piecesofvictory.com website.
Okay.
There's a lot of survivors' testimonies on there.
Okay.
And if you just copy and paste that and put that into a letter to your congressman,
You're golden. So I understand there are other houses that do the same thing or similar things that Victory Christian Academy did to you, and that continue to do this to children today. What can you tell us about those organizations?
sure. This is an epidemic that's happening across our nation, and right now I'm working on trying to get the Hephzibah House closed down, along with other survivors. I'm not a survivor of that, but survivors of the Hephzibah House and
Okay.
I are working closely together to get it shut down. It is located in Winona Lake, Indiana, and it has been open for over 4 decades, since 1971.
Wow.
And there's been numerous reports on child abuse. Numerous. And yet, it's
There-
still open for business. And when social services did go in there, they hide the girls. They hide the girls, and then those girls are so scared to say anything. Let me just tell you what goes on when social services comes in, because social services came in at Victory Christian Academy and I was there.
Right.
If a girl even looks at social services or give them an eye or any kind of eye movement, they will be demoted down to buddy. And if we can get into buddy later, but it's the lowest on the totem pole of hierarchy. And you're locked into isolation, you're punished. Girls are scared. They don't want to say anything. They want to get out of there. It's a survival tactic that
Right.
they're using they're in survival mode.
Right.
They don't want to say anything to social services. They want to get the hell out of there. And they don't think that social services will do that. They think that if they say anything, the program is going to just severely punish them. And they
Right.
will. So it's best that social services takes them out of the compound and talk to them
Right.
and reassure them that they don't have to go back to hell.
Right. Right. Wow. So in listening to you talk about this, I'm angry, right? I get angry. It upsets me. It bothers me that this is still going on in the United States. I'm sure there are people out there as well that feel the same way. How can we partner with you to help shut some of these places down that are abusing our children? Do you have access to this information on your website or places we can go to assist
Sure.
and partner with you?
There are testimonies on the Hephzibah House
Okay.
on my website. I have connections with the girls from the Hephzibah House, and we can have them as part on your show
Okay.
to tell their testimony. The more awareness that's out there, the better, and media attention is definitely key. So Anderson Cooper did do a thorough investigation on it several times. It's on my website, it's in my blog, it's on my blogs. If you would like information sent specifically to you, I can do that as well.
Just shoot you an email?
Just shoot
From
me an
your
email
email?
and I'll go ahead and send
On
you
the
a link
website,
to my
yeah.
blog
Okay.
regarding the Hephzibah House.
All right. Very good.
I suggest social services go in there and grab the girls and take them out, and social services, go ahead,
Right.
take them out,
This actually
question them.
Right. So this actually takes us back to the law that Adam Schiff is putting together. I think one of the big things that is lacking in the United States is that oversight and the accountability for these agencies and these organizations. That's why that law is so important. That's why I think it's vital that everybody gets behind Adam and the work he's doing on the law, and or their congressman, encouraging them to get behind this law and let's bring in some accountability, some oversight. Because I'm sure there are some agencies that are really doing a lot of good, and they're very reputable, upright, decent organizations, and they're doing phenomenal things with our children. There are a handful, I don't know how many, but there are some that abuse their privilege to care for our children, and like you, they're abusing them. So we need to bring in the accountability. If the organization is a good organization, the accountability is not going to bother them because they're already outstanding, upright organizations.
Right, they have nothing to be afraid of.
They have nothing to be afraid
It's
of.
the ones that they're hiding something,
Yes.
that don't want that oversight.
Right.
And I did send you a map, and if we can have a map in the background, and it has
Okay.
across the United States of all the places that are abusing children.
Wow. That map was everybody abusing children?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Some places
That
were
are all
nothing
the
but
ones
red.
those are all the places that are open today that are still abusing children. We have a problem.
It's epidemic.
It's an epidemic.
Wow. So it's important that you get involved, you make your voice heard, you contact your congressman, you take action and partner with Jeneen and with everybody else trying to shut these places down and protect our children.
Exactly.
Yeah. Jeneen, thank you so much for your time and your effort, for just taking the time out of your day to bless us with your story and enlighten us and teach us about some of the things that are going on. I am amazed that you are such a beautiful person today after going through all of this and after hearing your story. So I'm grateful to God that He is taking good care of you.